Welcome to the November 6th meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission. So first we'll ask if there's any changes to the agenda or public comment. No? Okay. So moving on, we'll start with the approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders.
I would like to move that we accept the minutes of the October 16th, 2023 meeting.
So then,
I'll second that.
okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes from the meeting from October 16th of 2023, please say your vote.
This is Jay.
This is David, I. Bard, I.
Aaron, I.
I'd like to move that we accept the minutes from the special meeting on the 25th. That was a special meeting, right? The 25th?
Yeah.
That was a special meeting, yes.
I move we accept the minutes.
I will second that motion.
Having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye to approving the minutes from the 10:25 meeting.
We didn't ask if there's any discussion.
Oh, sorry. If there's no further discussion. And oh man, now you've thrown me off course.
This is Jay.
Thank you.
That was perfect. Bard, I. David, I.
Aaron, I. All right, so number 4. We'll,
Actually, we've still got the warrants to approve.
Yeah.
oh, okay, and the purchase orders.
And there's no purchase order, so
Okay, so,
just warrants.
Just
Even though it
warrants.
says, I just think that
Yes.
it's the same wording.
okay, I'd like to
Okay.
move that we accept the warrants for as presented.
This is David, I'll second.
Do we have to talk about them individually or do we just do the
You can
warrants in a
ask
group?
if there's any questions or discussions
I
and then
mean,
if not,
it's impressive how much some of the things come to, like the Tinker Tower. Like 1,000 for them. I knew the engineering study would be expensive, and you know we've been seeing these charges all along, but it does come to a bit.
All right, so is there any further discussion about the warrants? So with no further discussion about the warrants, we can, and we had a
I
move and a second,
Yeah.
so we can vote. Great, so
David, I. Bard, I.
Jay,
Aaron, I. Okay. So now we will move on to our items for presentation. Our first item on the docket today is an update on the Gateway Sewer expansion, which includes an update from the Richmond Land Trust. So who would like to open?
Jeremy wants to go through it.
If that works.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So I sent in a letter earlier,
You Tell us who we are for
Oh.
the minutes.
Jeremy Hoff, on behalf of the Richmond Land Trust.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I sent a letter in earlier today, and giving a formal response to the commission's request with respect to the easement. I probably don't need to go through the background of where this comes from. We did undertake a nice process of talking to the interested stakeholders, which was very helpful. Definitely talking to the planning commission in particular helped assuage some of the concerns that we had about what could happen in the gateway. And it was frankly nice to look at the zoning regulations at this point and take a look at it through this lens. So just wanted to give them a compliment on that work. I'm happy to go through the points in the letter, or if you have questions, you can.
Well,
So I am saying this from the biggest place of kindness, but I didn't even have a chance to read the letter because it came a little later
Yeah.
until I got here.
Sure.
So I don't know how the other, if you guys had a chance to review it or not,
I'd be
But-
inclined to see if we could
maybe.
table it and bring it up to next meeting when, because it also hasn't been able to be published in the packets of the town.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and I guess I just feel like I haven't given it or didn't
That's fair.
have a chance to give it
Yeah.
enough, like looking and make questions. I don't know. I guess I feel like it needs more time and
That's
attention. Is
fair.
that okay?
So, yeah, I got this somewhere. I became aware of it at like 5:36.
Yeah. Well,
Um, And I think it properly should be attached as an attachment to the agenda at maybe the next meeting. But that said, maybe walk through some of the highlights. I'm literally, and then I was trying to open it here and it wouldn't open. So now I'm kind of reading it for the first time. Maybe just talk about what the highlights are and then we could table it and come back to it. Would that make sense to you guys?
I just feel like a lot of people put a lot of effort in and we
Right.
should
We don't wanna
probably
just-
read it and
No, that,
be
that-
thorough
no,
with
that-
it as
that-
well,
That's
right?
fair. I apologize for getting it to you late. It's just.
No, it's okay.
Like-
Yeah, exactly. That's why I hadn't read it yet. Life.
Um, yeah, I'm happy to just walk through the points and, answer any questions that come up and you can then take some time to review it and I'm happy to answer more questions. So no problem. So I guess to just go in order, there's bullet points, starting at the bottom of the first page. So we talked before about the fact that there's an existing easement in place that is limited to the REIT property. And in exchange for us expanding the scope of that easement to let other properties be served, we would be looking for the REITs to effectively give up their right to do the same thing. It's not that we want them to give up their utility easement in its entirety, and we recognize there's other potential uses for it, but we want to make sure there's not multiple water and sewer lines running through the property. It's just not efficient. I guess B talks about the fact that there's an open issue with the school district that needs to be resolved in terms of the condition of that line before the project can go forward. So that's on there. We didn't have any real engineering plans, but in discussions with various parties, it seemed like 6 inches on both of those lines was more than adequate, and we just felt it was good to put some parameter. D and E talk about not installing electric service or pump stations on the conserved property, which I don't think poses any technical issues. It would just be that those would be on one end of the line or the other and not in the middle of the conserved parcel. Engineering plans we don't have, so we would like to review before all is said and done. G talks about effectively the service area for this line, which is from the REIT property through the Crate Escape property, all of the parcels on the eastern side of Route 2. The mobile station, the Verberg Farm homestead, which is not the entire Verberg Farm property, but the area where the homestead is.
Would that service the 2 rental properties there too? There's 3 houses up there.
yeah.
So do all 3 houses?
Kind of envisioning the farm complex.
Yeah. Would
But not,
the land trust ever consider allowing them to have like just water for the barn if they wanted it?
yeah, I don't think they would necessarily need to use both, but if that was helpful for them, I
Yeah.
think that would be encompassed in this.
Okay.
And then really anything north of the I-89 interchange. So there's a few parcels that are excluded from that list that you'll see if you go around and pair it up to the map. Section H talks about the parcels in the Gateway District. Dedicating a 30-foot wide strip of land, and this concept has been presented in various committees and come up, and we think it's a great idea, and it's gotten a lot of positive feedback from a lot of different groups. And it seems like this is a good time to sort of introduce that concept. So a 30-foot wide strip, which is in the zoning setback, partially in the road right away. It's not really useful land in any, development sense anyway, to make sure that that's set aside in part for green space and in part to facilitate the walking bike path that has been coveted by many for a long time.
Like a bike path?
Effectively from the park and ride into the village.
Right. We've
Well-
discussed various routes for it.
Okay.
Except
Along Route 2 or up through the school.
it's really not effectively from the parking ride to the village.
From the park and ride So
To the REIT property
to the REIT
ostensibly,
property, and then somehow
in a
It doesn't-
mystical future, we'll
doesn't
find a
solve all
way.
the problems, but
Yeah.
Until.
So
the
I just
I'll do
wanna
some
correct-
research about that.
I want to correct the
didn't know that was
misperception
possible.
that it does not connect. This would not connect the park and ride to the village.
that is correct. It's one piece of that puzzle. And as the gateway gets built out, to make sure that that is provided for as, part of enabling more intense development out there, we think that's appropriate. I also think, as it says, it makes sense to be able to co-locate water and sewer lines. It is the same reason that the water department previously liked the idea of running the line route down Route 2. It's accessible. So there's different reasons for it too. And then lastly, it's just, we're happy to kind of go on the record and give you our position on the matter. Like, if people are gonna go forward with this at some point, we're happy to participate and get you to that threshold anyway.
Can I, just a couple of follow-up questions if I could?
Yes.
And you don't necessarily have to answer them now, but I think they're relevant. And so sort of in reverse order H, I know there's interested by committees and people who don't own property there. My question is, what do the people who own property there say about the path, the green belt?
Yeah, that's a question for them, I suppose,
So you've talked to the committees, but not the property owners about an easement that they would be obligated to give.
Correct.
Okay.
I have talked to the Reefs about it and they were very receptive.
Okay.
I haven't talked to property owners further out in the gateway.
And then, there's probably more in here, but my first observation, if I remember our previous water sewer superintendent saying to serve a fire hydrant down at the bottom of the hill that we'd need a diameter of 8 inches. Do we-
Minimally, yeah.
I would expect that, yeah. Without having any official look at anything.
I think 8
It's
inches.
usually a minimum of an 8 inch to service fire.
And that would be very helpful for fighting fires on the interstate because they can come back and refill there and not have to go somewhere else.
So that's just a sort of flag on that one for item C. I don't think 6 inches is a problem for sewer line. But water line, it would be, in my opinion, irresponsible to put water down there that didn't serve a hydrant
Yep.
for that part of town. So
Yeah.
something to kind
And as long as it doesn't have any material change to like the method of installation or, it's not going to affect the property some way. There aren't any engineering plans for this that we're aware of, so we were trying to put some parameters, and so if there's a compelling reason, let me know.
And I don't know who, I guess maybe it would be the Reaps because it's their interest, but I do think that someone should talk to an engineer before you say, okay, we say, okay, whoever votes
Yeah.
on this, to see what that is, because I do feel like I remember hearing 8 inches as well. And
I mean, I
that
think,
seems like it would be very important, but that might be on the Reaps to figure that out.
I
with
think
an
your
engineer.
intent more is to have it directionally bored, not to have it dug. Through the
correct.
property.
Yeah,
So,
and just to have some parameters on what the infrastructure is gonna be, so we can make a judgment call of if something happens, this isn't gonna be like catastrophic to the property.
Right.
So, if it's contained to 6 or 8 inches as opposed to
24.
whatever, we just kind of need to know what that is.
Yeah.
yeah,
Pay
it's,
attention to the woman behind the curtain.
I mean, you're just looking at wanting to know what the infrastructure is
Yeah.
and the reason behind
Yeah.
it.
And that it's not crazy.
Cool.
Okay, so that my maybe final comment is that the easement would all be contingent on multiple other easements from property owners and the school. So I feel like we're in this catch-22. Like this starts to feel like, I don't know how optimistic to be given the sequence of what you would seek property owners to do, the town to do with the school lines, and then this part last, presumably. That there's a lot of work for a hypothetical when my perception after 8 or 10 years is we don't have a way to make this financially viable
Right.
in the first place. And I'm recognizing that anything we do for a town easement and agree to would require input and meetings with our attorney, which is more investment. And that's a tough row if like an investment into a series of lines that I don't know of a way to build yet.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On a school line, obviously, we've had some issues with pressure tests and there's a lot of viable. If it comes to a point where the town's not willing or comfortable to take over that line, would you be open to a sort of replacement of that line? Is your goal to have just sort of one line through the school property?
It's really just a recognition of that's a significant hurdle that needs to get cleared for any of this to be viable. And we don't, we don't want to get down and try to negotiate like a
see.
complex easement document without these other.
Okay. So if the reefs that we're gonna put in the second line, the school's gonna keep theirs, they put in the second line,
accomplishes
if there's an
the-
easement
yeah.
for that, then, okay,
Yeah.
that's a little different angle, but okay, gotcha.
So I'm not sure that's what B says
That's
as written.
right.
So that's something to contemplate. This as written seems to imply to me, take over the water and there's some grammatical error of some kind in here anyway. Take over the water and sewer lines, extend through the USD. That's not clear that it means the existing lines, new lines, or either.
Okay. The intent is that there's connectivity from Jericho Road to the REAP property to make this easement useful.
On town line, so it's a connection to a town line, not a connection to
Well, you could have a private line from Jericho Road all the way through the school district and then through the conserved parcel of the REAPs, or you could have a town line from Jericho Road to past the school. I
But
mean,
that's not what B
that's-
says.
Well, I'm telling you what the intent of B is. If it's not clear, that's what it is intended to mean. We just want. Something needs to happen there for the next
Right.
segment
Clearly.
to be added on.
So in the interest of time, is it time to say that
Yeah.
we'll keep looking at this and make notes and come back to it?
Yeah.
I think an initial conversation was useful, and thanks for
Yeah.
putting this and sending it today. I think if we attach it to the next meeting, I think we should also, if we haven't, send it to the school and the other property owners, just in advance, so they know, like, this is what we're gonna talk about, and
Yeah.
like, has at least conceptual implications for all of them.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
That seems reasonable. Are you writing that down as a next meeting topic, or should I?
No, I got
Yeah, I don't think we need a
it.
formal motion to table. We can just have Josh.
No, I got it as next topic. I guess who is gonna, are we gonna mail it to all the existing property? You're envisioning all the property owners from the REAPs up to and including the mobile station?
And
I
the-
was.
and the Verberg house.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 11 parcels.
I mean, anybody that is required or in the thing that would have to give a 30-foot easement would
Should be.
probably
invited.
want to
Do you
know
want the
about it.
town to send that upward?
I think so.
Okay.
And they mightn't be enthusiastic, I don't know, just at least to know. I find it awkward to have a conversation about their property without at least notifying them that that's what we're doing.
And I will say, I appreciate you putting this together on behalf of the REAPs for what the, I mean, it seems like something they wanted to have happen, so
Right.
we do
Sometimes it
appreciate
just
that
starts working out,
happening, yeah.
but You don't always get all the data you need at the time you need it.
Yeah.
This will give us a chance to really digest it.
Do we know at one, yeah, exactly.
Right.
At one point, they had mentioned they might not be interested anymore. Do we know their interest level?
I think that's a better question for them than for me.
Yeah. I guess I was asking anyone that question. I didn't know.
It is lower than it had been
Okay,
because they feel very frustrated. They had hoped to build this season. I don't think that's happening.
All the more reason to
Yeah.
invite them
To the
to
next meeting.
participate if they're interested. I think that my personal perception is that their interest has waned substantially since the early days of this conversation 8+ years ago.
I think that they are right now proceeding primarily on the other plan B, which was
Storage units.
Yeah. which would require no water, so. Or essentially. water.
No
It might-
sewer either.
Require a fire hydrant though, because we looked
Well,
into
that's
them at
true.
one point,
Hmm.
and that's why 8 inches keeps sticking out to me, because we would have to put a fire hydrant in to have storage.
Interesting.
But anyway, moving on.
Well,
Fire protection is a valuable
now they know
service.
that
of
there's
water.
water source there, and I am not educated on these things, can they tank it up to a certain point and then say because we have
Yes.
this on premise?
Possible.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But it's a big tank.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
Short-term problem and a long-term.
Yeah,
problem,
exactly.
so
Lots of things.
Yeah,
look at-
It's a lot of
Yeah.
questions for the REITs. I
Well,
think.
thank you very much.
yeah,
My
thanks,
pleasure.
thanks for putting this
Your
together
time and
and
coming.
for coming.
You
And
got it.
I'm sorry that I didn't have time to look at it.
No, that's, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
So moving on to our next topic is the review of October 2023 water data.
yes.
Steve, you wanna
And
take
I'm
a
gonna
read?
pull that up on my,
I'll share it here too.
So I had a question down there at the very bottom, but I mean, I know we're gonna go over all of it, but at the very bottom, we highlighted. In yellow, the 0.78, but right above that is that 0.61.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, it was.
I was just,
Oh,
You're on it.
you highlighted the wrong number, I guess.
No, it should have been both
anything
of
below
them,
0.8
actually.
should
Oh,
have-
0.8, right, yeah, we should have both of
Yeah.
them, sorry.
So it's just an oversight, I just,
No,
Nope, we should have.
I did the highlighting. It's totally my fault.
oh, and the other question I had was the 1.2.
Yeah, that's highlighted because it's high.
Yeah,
And we'll go into that here in a minute.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna go over that, I think overall the numbers are, there's a few anomalies, but it's sort of to be expected on water or fluoride and chlorine. But I think our biggest thing we have found out is that when we are testing, we send a monthly testing to the state.
So,
Fluoride, and Steve, run from here.
yeah, the state requires a monthly fluoride test. And we've been doing it. And it's just a little test tube, you fill it up, you put the cap on, you put it in the mail and you send it in. I hadn't as personally been really looking at them until I am now in charge, so I'm looking more in depth at the reports. The one that came to my attention was the September one that was what we read was a 0.6, I think. And then what the state read was a 0.4.
Right,
And that's negligible. I mean, they do a different test than we do. And this is from talking with people in the state. The one that concerned me was the one where we sent a sample in that was a 0.6
The October.
and it came back less than 0.1.
Now, were both of those samples taken at the same point?
Yes,
At the
same time.
Okay,
Split the sample. We physically take a sample and that's why I brought this. I was going to show you how we do it.
next time send the other one in.
Well, yeah, essentially, and I've looked into this. On a lot of things like chlorine, there's only a 15-minute hold time. On fluoride, it's pretty much unlimited because it doesn't dissipate like chlorine does. So that's fine. The September one, we physically put in the mail and sent it in. And if you look, we sent it on like the 1st and they didn't read it until like 14 days later. So I was like, okay, must be something to do with going through the mail. So the October one, we physically hand delivered to the lab. And it still took 11 days for them to process it. With all the fluoride things that have gone on in Richmond, we're trying to stay on top of this.
Why do you think there's such a discrepancy between our sample and the state sample?
So do you want what I was told today from Roland Luxembourg, who is the state guy who will be here tomorrow morning to help me try to figure this out?
Yeah.
He told me that probably the state made the mistake and put a blank in when they were doing our test. I said, this is not what I want to tell people.
Do we get a mulligan on that?
Yeah, that's what I ask, you know, but, you know, and that's what he told me today. But at 9:15 tomorrow morning, he's gonna come and we're gonna go completely through the whole, fluoride thing and the test. And so what we are going to do and what we had already talked to Josh about this, we are gonna take a sample. We are going to do our test. We're going to split this sample. So we're going to do our test. We're going to send a sample to the state. And we've already set it up to send a sample to Endine, which is the lab we use. And they will do a fluoride test within 2 days of getting it. So we'll have 3 samples all done out of the same thing. Plus, we're going to put the rest of the sample in our fridge, which is how they keep it at 6 Celsius. 10 days, we're going to pull it out and we're going to go through the whole process again to see what the problem is, if there is any, or where or what's happening.
Are we aware of any difference in the testing between what we do in-house, what the state does, and how Endine does it?
Yes,
Okay.
this is how we do it and how just about every, except for like Champlain Water District, which has a chemist on board. This is the approved method, the way we use. It's basically it's a colorimeter. So it reads, and this is a blank one. You put it in, you turn it on, you zero it out, you fill this, and I can do this if there's a water right here, right?
Yeah.
I think,
Nope. Let's go to commercial.
yeah.
Go to the bathroom.
That away.
Down the hall on your left.
Can
Sorry.
we make a note for Duncan to write that spiel that he just gave us with his plan in the minutes? So if we need to
Yeah.
go back and look at it,
Duncan is listen.
Okay.
So,
because I feel like that would be good to be able to read when he brings us
how we're
our,
gonna try to.
when he brings us his results next time. Because it
Yeah.
sounds like a very thought out plan. I like it.
This looks like a quick in the field ballpark test. I would
Well,
suspect that a lab test is more accurate.
so I do want to, and maybe I'll wait till Steve gets back, but this test is what the state supplies to us
Right.
for being on the program. So it's the one that everybody gets. It was just calibrated in September. They calibrate it once a year. So it was,
This one.
yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, Steve, just to make sure that, I want to make sure a couple things on this.
Yep.
So these are the tests that are supplied by the state. This is the
Yep.
testing method. If you're in the fluoride program, this is what you get from the state. This is their approved method.
Yep.
You calibrate,
Here's this testing kit,
yes,
use
use
this.
this. Well, no, it gets calibrated once a year, and we just had it
Yeah.
calibrated in September. So it was recently calibrated. So we're with a reasonable degree of confidence that we're getting a good number from this
Yeah.
test.
So we basically, these are the test vials that they comes in a pack of 30. And then the blank is basically what you do is you take one sample and we have deionized water that we buy from lab, and you fill this up and you break one of the samples in there and it'll fill up, and then that is your blank for that box. With all this going on, one of the chemists that I spoke with said we should now at this point break it and do a new one for every sample we do. So we're doing that. I just didn't do it tonight because I didn't want to waste them because I'm a box down right now. But so basically you fill this up and it's just an ampule, you put it in and it fills itself up. It's vacuum packed. You put this in, you zero it out.
So that's the calibration right there.
That zeroes it. Yep. the unit was calibrated by the approved, it's a company out of Maine. And they go to, I mean, they went from our lab to Endine, and they were calibrating Endine's lab after us. So, I mean, I think they know what they're doing, and he said all of our equipment passed. And it didn't have any issues. So, and then it's just, you wipe all the fingerprints and all the stuff off, and that's a chem wipe. And you put it in and you wait a minute. And I was watching the stop from the time that I filled it. It's been over a minute. And it should give us. So it's a 0.39 right now, what I took out of that, which is today's testing at the plant and at the water house. The plant was a 0.41 and the water house was a 0.59.
It'll be higher at the Waterhouse because that's where it's at.
Just going into the system, correct.
And our target's a 0.6,
Target is a 0.7,
0.7.
but because, so there's two issues. There's our testing results with the state. And we are also having a problem right now. This testing results is prior to the problem we're having right now with our fluoride is actually dosing higher than it should according to our test.
Okay.
So we are cutting it back with the hopes that we're not overdosing, because fluoride's a poison. And so we're on the cautious side right now, but the testing with the state and their results and our results is prior to what is going on right now. So there's two separate things. One is the test result that we're getting from the state, and the other is the overdosing problem that we're having with the pump.
So how high was our test showing our fluoride was at the highest?
At the highest, that it was a 1.2,
Okay.
and a maximum is a 1.
Okay.
So it's a concern. And that also occurred, that occurred on the 31st.
Scary.
And it had been fairly steady the rest of the week. We had cut back on the speed, which is the dosing pump. We cut back, and it had been pretty steady up until Saturday when I checked it. It was back at a 0.1213.
Okay.
And at that point, and both of the times that we got high numbers, we immediately unplugged the pump, and we immediately took a sample from up on Jericho Road, a sample at the thing, town center, at the several places in town, verifying that we didn't have any, high in
So
the
what were the
system.
field tests?
Yeah, just like we did
But
here.
what were those results?
Those were all within the range,
Under 1.
huh?
Under 1.
Oh, yeah. Most of them were in the 0.5 to 0.6 range,
Okay.
which, doesn't scare me.
What's the low end of the range?
The low end is, you guys asked us to keep it between a 0.7.
Well, the range is 0.6 to 1.0,
Yeah.
with the optimal level being 0.7.
0.7.
Right.
This might be a dumb question, but if it's sitting at the state for 10 days, does the fluoride dissipate at all?
They say no.
Okay,
And that's one thing that we're trying to find out.
yeah,
So it should.
that's why I like.
It
your
should have
other
the
one.
same, it doesn't, I was told it doesn't matter if it goes into a post office box and sits there and freezes at night and then they thaw it out. They told me that none of that matters. Which is why we hand delivered it right to the lab in Colchester this last time, trying to figure it out.
So the sample that goes to the state, is that in one of those little red vial
No,
bottles?
it's in just a test tube
Okay.
with a screw top.
Okay.
Well,
They use a different method they don't use this method. It's molecular something,
The lab.
something, yeah, it's in the lab. And basically what they do is they wait till they have like 20 samples, then they set their machine up and they run them all through.
Well,
At least that's what I was told.
yeah, I like your plan of action. It seems like you have a good strategy for, all
So
the
the
sampling.
plan of action for this is to do testing and try to figure out where it is.
Yeah.
Where the discrepancy is, because I know there's fluoride in there. We're using it. There's, the amount is going. It's to figure out, why we're getting low numbers at the state and to figure it out. The other end of it, the issues with the dosing that we're having, I mean, we're doing everything the same for a year now. And we just have in the past 2 weeks had this issue. So one, I've asked, and since the state supplies us with all of this stuff, one, I've asked the state to buy us a new dosing pump. It's like $1,300, but they're supposed to supply it to us. And then we'll install it and we'll, see if that makes a difference. And the state guy is coming tomorrow to assess. He was here in August and found no problems with anything we were doing. He thought everything was right on track. But I told him the problems we were having. He's like, I'll be there at 9:15 tomorrow morning and we'll go through everything again. And he's like, he's like, you were doing it right. If you haven't changed anything, it's gotta be, mechanical.
well, thanks, and definitely
And
let us
and
know if you
I
find
just
something
felt
out.
that everybody needs to know everything
Yeah,
on it.
we definitely appreciate your transparency, right?
Yes.
That is a
Very much so.
Madam Chair, I think that's an
Wonderful thing.
excellent term to use to characterize today's conversation.
Well, while you're packing your bag up, or your box up, will you give us a quick update on the staffing, and then we have a few
Yeah,
things.
we
have to
hired
vote on.
a new guy, Michael Coyne. And he is from Ferrisburg. He's a firefighter down in Ferrisburg. He has a farm background, but has also worked in construction, and mechanically inclined. Pretty much a lot like myself. Whatever, he can figure out, you give him the directions, the job is completed, that's what, Brad was just saying that, gee, everything you tell him to do, it gets done. So, he finds a way to get it done or you ask the right questions. So, primarily right now, we're just trying to do a lot of cleaning and household stuff that we really haven't been able to do when it was just Brad and I. And we're getting ready to start tearing into the press and pulling that apart. So yeah, Mike, I think is going to be a great asset. And he's showed up every day on time.
Great. We're happy. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I think we did a good job picking it.
Good, thank you. And it sounds like in our packet, it says that we still have an open position for the 4th staff member, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So that's great.
We have some other, Josh and I, we had about 24 applicants to choose from.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna go back into the packet and see who we think might fulfill another job.
Awesome. All right, so this one's a voting item, number D, letter D. Consideration for approval of residuals management participation agreement with the Chittenden Solid Waste District. Do you want to give the
Sure.
quick
So
overview on that one?
I think it was about a year ago, CSWD was going through the process of looking at other options besides Casella for disposal of the solid waste. They'd been in an agreement with them for the last 5 years. The term was coming up where they could either renew or get a new provider. They looked at a few different providers and determined that Casella was the best option price-wise, even with proposed rate increases after the term of the 5 years. The board sent in a letter to agree to that a few months ago, and now we're just sort of the paperwork phase where CSWD has upgraded their agreement, or basically just amended their agreement to extend it for 5 years with Casella. And now they're going to each of the individual wastewater treatment facilities, us included, to ask us to sign on to an agreement that updates our agreement with CSWD for 5 years. And the agreement they sent over, if you look at it, it's really just the first couple of pages as far as dates and timeline that updates this. Everything else is exactly the same as the agreement that we've been in for the last 5 years with CSWD.
Does anyone have any more questions or follow-up on that? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mayor, this is David, I move to approve the residuals management participation agreement with the Chittenden Solid Waste District and to appoint town manager Josh Arneson as the duly authorized representative.
This is Bart. I will second that.
So hearing no additional questions or comments, we will put that to a vote.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Say aye.
Aaron, I. Lucky you, Josh. You've been appointed.
Well, that's mostly so I can sign the paperwork on behalf of the commission in front of Linda as the notarized. It's easier to designate me than be like, hey, Aaron, come on in.
So, do we want to quickly skip to F because we have to vote on that PFAS one quick?
Sure.
Is that all right with you guys? Okay.
Sure.
So we're going to skip to letter F, consideration of remaining as a participant in 2 PFAS class action lawsuits.
You want me to give a brief overview? Okay, so there was two class action lawsuits that are being litigated. I think it's in North Carolina against 3M and DuPont. I did ask our attorney, for some advice on what should we do here. Sort of the long and the short of it comes down to if we stay in these suits, we're entitled to some amount of the compensation when it comes to fruition. There is another suit. This is the one that has the other suit going on by, sorry. Okay, there is another suit that Vermont is bringing, but that's sort of in the early stages and it's yet to be seen if there's actually going to be a settlement on that. If we participate in the 2 national suits, there's a potential that we wouldn't be able to participate in the Vermont suit when it gets to fruition, but that's not 100% guaranteed. The advice from the lawyer essentially is, you got a bird in hand and potentially 2 in the bush. So the proverbial kind of stick with what we got here is probably the best advice, really not knowing what the potential is with the Vermont suit.
Okay.
And also, I think our PFAS test, when we were first asked to participate or told we had to, we tested, we had a low detect, which made us have to test every 3 years after that. Our next required testing, I think, showed no PFAS. Just to give an idea.
The
of
next
where
two,
we're-
so,
Okay, 2 tests.
so in, I think 2020, the regular PFAS test, it was 0.01 over the limit. It just tripped you guys into testing every year. So in the first year, the next test was a negative, no detect. The second one has been a no detect, and then we're on schedule to do one this year, which we anticipate being a no detect.
So just to be clear, being 0.01 over means the water's still safe, but that's what Vermont determined to be a level that requires monitoring.
Yes.
And Vermont's levels are much
Yeah.
lower than the EPA and federal guidelines. Sorry. I didn't touch it.
And no, you're right. And so it's really, we're having a no detect, but it could be as simple as the container that the person took the sample with was the wrong container. I mean, they come and they'll sample for you. And, it's like, I think it was $800 because they come and they set out a whole thing at the waterhouse and it all, and everything has PFAS in it now. And their containers all have to be, and it could be as simple as brushed it with an article of clothing or something that knocked us into the testing, but to be on the safe side, we've done 2 more tests that have been back with no detect anywhere, and the third one, I assume this year will be the same.
The thing with PFAS to keep in mind, actually 2 things is it's in everything.
Yep.
It's not like it's just the dry cleaning industry or
Oh,
just
no.
the textile industry or just the building.
The research that the state of Vermont has done with New Hampshire has shown it to be higher levels in residential areas than in commercial, processing or manufacturing places.
The other thing I just want to mention is it's called a forever chemical because nothing breaks these down in the environment.
No.
Or in our bodies.
So we, I just scheduled, this week, I think Thursday, the state of Vermont is, contracted with an engineering company. So all of our wastewater is now getting tested. They're gonna be coming in and testing the influent and effluent that we're dumping out. And they're gonna be testing for PFAS in that. And that is gonna be one of those things where if they find it in numbers that are, I mean, it's gonna be there, they're gonna find it. It's in all the wastewater. But if it's in numbers that are too high, they're gonna look for, wanting some kind of control out of your wastewater plant.
And that's a good thing to know because we know that it's not going in through our water system. So if it's showing up in the treatment plant, then that could alert us that somebody could be dumping it into the collection
Could be,
system.
yeah.
Which
Or
is
it could
good
be
to know.
runoff.
Yeah.
Could be anything,
Because we've got
yeah.
so much infiltration right now.
Right. In New Hampshire, they found it in actual high levels in the middle of the White Forest.
Yeah.
Just where the only way it could have gotten there was rain.
Hmm.
So.
So do we want to make a motion on the
Right, there's an,
lawsuits, or do we want to table that till
no, I
next
think
time?
we need to
or-
make the motion.
think
Who's got it, Andy? Just
I got it. Do you want it?
So Aaron, this is David. I move that the town continues participation in the PFAS class action suits against 3M and DuPont.
Following no further questions or comments, let's take a vote.
David, I.
Art, I.
Aaron, I. So gentlemen, do we want to do our other voting item and table other things? We need to vote on changing the meeting.
Oh, definitely, let's do that.
Okay, so let's go to I.
We move the January 1st meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission to January 2nd.
This is David. I'll second.
Great. With no further questions or comments?
Can't put it on the second.
Nope,
That's
no
fine.
further questions or comments. Let's take a vote.
David, I.
Art, I.
J.I.
Aaron, I.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So are we,
Have her come, we'll.
are we good moving the update about the water meters and the update on the water sewer line to next meeting so that we can review the list of water and wastewater items?
That works for me.
Does that
I mean,
work?
you might have time to get through it all. There's
Okay,
not a
well,
lot on the way.
Go
There's
for
not a
it.
lot on the, basically, we're moving forward with the, press, project. We're already dismantling part of the press that we're not using all the time. Was on the phone today with the engineers, actually right up until I came over here. On the influent pump problem that we're currently have. We went to on the 2nd, we went to a trade show at the Doubletree in Burlington. And the engineers were there and they took us around and showed us the new influent pumps that they were looking at. We got to talk to the pump guys and see what kind we liked. And also the bar screen, which is basically the protection for those pumps, which is basically a screen that's gonna go in the channel in front of them, but it has a rake that will bring the debris up to the top and then it goes into what they call a compactor, which is a screw press, dewaters it and puts it into a dumpster. Yeah, that part looked really good. So, yeah, we're moving forward on a lot of things. And like I said, we're doing a lot of household cleaning, sprucing up, trying to get ready for winter. And it'll be here.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the update. So moving on, Josh, could you give us an update on the contracting for water meters?
Continues to be an ever slow process. I do have feedback from Zenner on our changes. We need to review that with our attorney and get back to Zenner, and we need to make this happen soon. Just dragging on.
You can't just lock all the lawyers in a
Yeah.
room
Yeah.
till you get the answer.
But no, I mean, I think we do have good feedback from Noah,
Yeah.
and it's just a matter of what can we accept and not, and then I think at some point we just need to say, we're good.
Okay. So lastly, we have a quick update on the water service line inventory, Josh.
Yes, so they have 334, 355 connections in the system have been confirmed non-lead, which leaves 21 unclassified. Of the unclassified connections, 14 are ready for a second round of door-to-door inspection, which will be done in the coming weeks. 7 of them are meter accounts and serve unknown addresses. And he's working with Steve to figure out those 7 addresses to try to complete this by the end of the year.
Awesome.
I think we're mostly,
I haven't heard from them about 7 addresses that they didn't have.
well, expect to, I
Seriously,
suppose.
seriously, look at
Yeah.
the bills. They don't really have addresses.
I guess.
He's coming at some
All
point,
right.
so. But yeah, I mean, it looks like they've only got 21 left out of 355.
Yeah.
That's great.
We're getting close.
How can
Awesome.
we have meter connections that we don't know the address associated with?
That was my question.
I got this at the end of the day Friday. I didn't dig into it too much. I'm sure there's gotta be a reasonable
So,
explanation. I don't know that.
I will tell you this, in going forward, and hopefully now that we have a little more staff, we are going to try to update some of the information that we have.
was
When we
incomplete.
read the meters, the name on our meter sheet, that corresponds to probably 30 years ago, whoever was living in that house, not the current person that lives there.
Who gets the bill?
That goes by the account number, but, and so like George Gifford's house, that says Gifford, but not George, it's his dad, and so there's a lot of them that, I mean, I recognize the people who live there, but haven't lived there or are deceased now.
Haven't lived.
Yeah,
I've
So-
seen that on the tax maps as
yeah,
well.
probably.
That like there's certain things that I'm like, that's like 2 people away.
Yeah.
But
So there's a lot of things that we need to improve in as far as current, especially in this day and age with, everything computerized and can be on. We need to know who's living there. So when, somebody moves, we know who to contact if we need to get into the house, or if they've got especially with the smart meters, if we detect a water break or a water leak, and who do we contact, we need to upgrade all that
The
stuff.
answer to who you're gonna call cannot actually be.
a gravesite.
Well, currently it is.
Well, if you need any help with any of that,
Well, how do you
I
contact,
volunteer Jay and I.
well, how do you contact Sumner Fire? Because he's still on.
No, exactly. I don't blame you.
Madam
So-
Chairwoman,
So
Is
I
the first
think-
step then to just identify where the service lines are?
yes.
Yeah,
And go-
I mean, I believe they have addresses for them,
Okay,
but I don't know what they're talking about, those ones that you said they have no
History line.
I
address.
don't know. I literally, I have.
I
a
don't
call
know,
with them.
we have
We can find out.
We have 911 addresses for all the accounts.
Yeah.
And I gave them all that information.
Madam Chairwoman.
okay, yes, I
I move we adjourn.
okay.
Yeah.
I will second.
But before we do that, we have to put next meeting, right? The items for next meeting quickly.
there is one that popped up, the Tilden line replacements,
Right.
and associated with that, the service line replacements. We talked about this maybe a year ago. that when we let that contract, the discussion was to let residents or customers who needed updated service lines to sort of hook onto their contract and pay the contractor to update their
I
service
remember.
lines as well.
Okay, I can ask Tyler to be here for that one, because I think he's been having some issues getting a final approval from the state on the loan. But I know I'll ask him to be here for the next meeting and we'll get an update.
So that and the Jeremy, and then hopefully we'll have a contract for water meters.
That would be.
And I'm
We'll have
sure-
Nothing more.
Other things will come up between now and then, right?
We'll have plenty.
Okay, so Jay, now I will accept your motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Who's seconding? All right, so all in favor of adjourning this meeting?
Jay, I.
Bart, aye.
David, I.
Aaron, I.
Yeah, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great
Well
job.
done.
Thanks,
Yes,
no
good.
problem.